This is Steve Ridgel, and I'm talking a little bit this week in these videos about death and dying, and we talked last time about how baptisms, I think, literally where we die to ourselves, deny ourselves, and are crucified with Jesus, buried with Christ. And so it reminds me of a passage that Paul, who actually wrote that passage about baptism in Romans and how it's dying with Jesus, being raised to new life. He also wrote in Galatians 2, verse 20, and said this, I've been crucified with Christ. Nevertheless I live, yet not I, but Christ lives in me. So the life I now live in the flesh, I live by faith in the Son of God who loved me and gave himself for me. So it's one thing to say, yes, I've denied myself. Yes, I've died with Christ. Yes, I've lost my life to find it. It's another thing to understand how that plays out. How do we live as dead people? Well, and I think Paul's passage in Galatians explains a lot of it, because we have been crucified with Christ, but we still live, but it's not us. We have denied ourselves. We have died to ourselves. It's Christ that lives in us, and that determines everything, because the life that we're living here, this dead life we're living, that's got new life, the new life we're living after we have died, well, we live that by faith in Jesus. You know, there's so many things about this life that are hard. We have to have faith. I have to trust that God is going to take care of me financially, emotionally. I'm going to have food. I'm going to have shelter. I'm going to have community. And God provides those, but sometimes in the dark of night, you have to remember and think, God has got this. I must have faith to live my life for Jesus. It's hard sometimes to get up and remember, today I am a dead man walking. Say no to myself. I was crucified with Christ, so I want to live for Jesus. So when I see people, I'm going to try to treat them like Jesus treats them. When I have to make a decision about how I'm going to act, what I'm going to do or what I'm going to not do, I try to think, what would Jesus do? Because I'm living everything in this life based on faith in Jesus. And that's hard sometimes, because our culture says, here's how you live. My own desires and wants would say, here's how you live. But Jesus says, you were crucified with me and you were raised to a new life. That's what your baptism was. So live out your baptism. Live out your new life. Live as dead to you and alive to me. So put your trust in me, put your trust in my Son, because he loved you enough to die for you, to give his life for you, and then to give you life. And so I live every day living out my death life, living out my new life after I died with Jesus, living as a dead man walking, because Jesus did love me and die for me. And I died to myself, and I was crucified with him, and I was raised to a new life. So I will live every day by faith in Jesus. Well, this is Steve Ridgel wishing you today to live by faith.